you introduce yourself to my listeners?
Yes, so I am Whitney Miller. I live in Texas, and I'm former Miss United States, went into fighting, was a glory kickboxing commentator, and now I'm in the love and relationship field, trying to help couples create their most optimal relationship. And really that started because, I've been in a 5-year open relationship with my fiancé, Aubrey Marcus, and we're pretty open about it. And so for us, it's about people realizing that there's multiple ways of having relationships, not just one. And you should be able to decide which one works best for you.
Cool. And the reason I was really, really excited to get you in my podcast is because I'm in somewhere between open and poly relationship myself. And I was really looking forward to asking you some questions, things that we're struggling with. So I've seen, you guys are really open. I've been following Aubrey for a long time. I love his podcast. And there was this shitstorm coming over you and him on Instagram last week or so, or after your podcast. And I read the comments. I'm like, what is it? I don't know if it's a American thing versus how we are in Europe. I don't know, but do you have negative comments all the time, or?
We get a lot of love too. We get a lot of love, and we also get a lot of hate. So it's what we see on Instagram is people, humans are very adaptable. And so when we're trying to understand something that we're not used to and it's something very unknown to us, we then put ourselves in that situation. Yeah. So I think that's what really causes a lot of this backlash, because they're trying to figure out if they could do it, and they don't want to think that their wife wants to be with anybody else or their husband wants to be with anybody else. And I think that's what causes so much of the insecurities and the backlash that we've received. But, for every few haters, really beautiful messages that have, those are the ones that really inspire me to keep going and keep spreading this message as much as I possibly can.
Yeah, I can imagine. And also when I read the comments, a lot of them were that real love is only if you are with one person. I read it and this doctrine of how it should be, and who says love can't be shared, or who says it's not true if it's not with one person.
It's so true, and I feel like that's why a lot of people in relationships feel like they're doing something wrong, because we're born into this world and we're handed a relationship and we're told, okay, this is the only relationship that you can have, and most of the time everyone around you, it's not working all that much, but we're not going to give you another option. And so I think that's why a lot of people, and one of the reasons why I started and was curious about an unconventional relationship, was because I always felt like I was doing something wrong. I would be in a monogamous relationship with somebody and really love them, and we would have a great relationship, but then I still wanted novelty, and then it would kind of die out, and then we would have to break up, and it was this constant cycle. And so I constantly felt like I was doing something wrong, and I was never going to find a relationship where I would be happy and not see anybody else as attractive and not be interested in anybody else. And so when the open relationship and unconventional kind of ways of thinking about relationships, I was curious. I didn't have the answer if I was monogamous or not monogamous. I just knew whatever I was doing wasn't really working all that well. So I was curious to find out what other options would be out there.
And how did it open up between you guys? Because you were in a relationship for a couple of years and then you decided to open up. Who started, and what was that first conversation like? Were you already engaged at that point?
No, we weren't already engaged. So we were 2 years monogamous, but we were already living with each other, and we moved really fast. We met each other and then moved in with each other within a 3-month period. And so we were monogamous, and we had read Sex at Dawn by Chris Ryan, a really good friend. And we had, one of our good friends who was trying to figure out kind of a polyamory situation. And so we were able to talk about it on an intellectual level. I wonder if we could do this, or how would you feel if I did this? But we never put it into action. And then when the conversation became manifest, Aubrey, said, I'm interested in having an open relationship. And I said, hail no. So I could logically understand why we could do it, but I wasn't ready for it. I was like, this is just not okay. You have to love me. And how come I'm not enough? And all of these insecurities are coming up. And so then we actually split up. So we split up for 3 months. I moved out of the house and I went backpacking for 3 months completely by myself. And during that time, there was this guy who I found really attractive, had a really great time with, but still in my heart, I loved Aubrey and wanted to be with Aubrey. But so that was interesting for me to realize I can be interested in this other person and still want to hang out and explore whatever that is, but it's not taking away my love for Aubrey. I still love him. So when I got back from my trip, he said, I want to be with you. And I said, I still want to be with you. But we were doing it under an unconventional, kind of open container. And he was seeing somebody already at that point.
And were you still seeing the other guy as well?
No, we were just mainly friends, basically. So it wasn't like a deep relationship. It was just mainly like friends and fun. And I was traveling and he was there, and we're still friends to this day. But it never really got super intimate between us. It just showed me that, I can still I can still want to have somebody and still love Aub. And so we all kind of jumped into this. And, the reason why, like I said, is because I just didn't know. I was curious. Yeah. I wanted to know if I could do this, or I didn't want to do it, instead of just thinking, nope, not for me. Yeah.
And if the questions are too direct or open, by the way, but
no problem at all. I'm an open, but we're pretty open about this whole thing, because I think, being this open and sharing our story helps other people feel like, I'm not. And so, I'm an open book.
Okay, exactly. Then I'm just going to continue with the questions. Right. Yeah, because the situation I'm in, there's some stuff that you encounter. I'm like, I'm wondering how other couples, or I don't even know what we call, how would you describe us? Like this 3 people, I don't know what it is, but there's some context for you. I have a boyfriend who has another girlfriend besides me, but we are equals. So you would call him poly.
Yep.
They don't live together. We don't live together. He just switches houses a lot. And then we've been dealing with this. What I really resonated with what you said in the podcast, like, don't do this just for the sex. Don't. Just find something else, because you're going to have to deal with your darkness, your shadows, your shit. Everything will come up like tenfold. So how was that with you in the beginning? Well, your first reaction was like, hell no. And then you came back together and he was already seeing someone. So how did you manage, I can imagine, jealousy or insecurities or...
Oh, absolutely. I think too, for people who are in some sort of unconventional relationship or consensual non-monogamy, is first and foremost, it's a commitment with yourself. So you have to realize that, yes, it's going to bring up your shadow, and it's going to bring up insecurities and traumas that you haven't looked at before in this type of light. And so that's why I say don't do it just for the sex, because it's painful and it hurts to look at that, And so if it's just doing it to have sex with somebody else, it's just not going to be worth the work that goes into this type of relationship. So, for me, when we first started this, I said, okay, like I said, I'm curious. I want to know what programming I have from my parents or society. And I want to be able to make my own decision about what relationship is right for me. So let me go through this experiment, basically, and see how
I called it an experiment as well. Like, we'll see, like, every little step, checking in. why am I doing this? Am I doing this for him, for me? I don't know. Like, and I wish every relationship would be this aware, like, what am I doing? Am I still liking this? Why am I doing this? For who am I doing this? So
it would change love and relationships for the better, just for people to look at their own, like, am I getting validation from this person? Am I only staying with them because of XYZ, instead of like really checking in and being, like you said, like, is this truly what I want? And if it's really not what you want, then that's okay. Then you can make the decision to move on. But, you know, we're so afraid of leaving our relationships and what that means for us that we get stuck and we don't do the work. We just kind of stuff and we distract and we pretend like it's not there, and we, you know, medicate, and it kind of turns into this whole, I don't know, crazy situation, and we get stuck in that. And so what was great about open or poly is it forces you to look at all of your, like we said, insecurities, and you're constantly checking in. Oh, okay, wait. Oh, this is self-worth. You know, I'm scared he's going to love her more because I don't love myself enough. I'm scared that he's going to leave me for her because I have abandonment issues from my family. And so that's what it was for me, is I wanted to know who I truly was and what was programming, what I actually believed, what I didn't believe, what I really wanted, what I didn't want. And, you know, the first 8 months, I didn't have another lover. And so it was just him. And so to me, I was like, well, of course he wants this open relationship, you know, it works out for you, bro. And there were tons of tears. There was days where I cried every single day, and there was fights, and there was, because it brings up everything.
Did you also have like people like, Whitney, why are you doing this? This is causing you so much pain. Stop it. And I got like a point I was a little bit tired about, like, okay, friends, please do your own ego work. I'm going to do mine. Please don't let me also do yours. No, right. I am taking care. No, I'm not. So it was exhausting to deal with it, but also like managing other people's like concerns about you.
Well, they project their thought process onto you. Oh, I could never do that, so you shouldn't do that. Yeah. That makes me mad. Even
taking advantage of you.
Exactly. He just wants his cake and to eat it too. And it's like they create these stories that are just projections of their own fear. Yeah. When, you know, I had to get to a point to where I couldn't talk to absolutely everybody about the open relationship at first, because some friends, that's what it was. It was just fear. Oh, he's an asshole. He's a dick. He's just doing this. You need to take care of yourself. You need to go off and do this because he's doing this, you know, and just like a tit for tat kind of game. And instead of like talking to people who can see where, if there is a disconnect, be able to like figure that out, but then also is not just bashing the relationship because they don't understand it.
And how did you deal with it? Because 8 months is quite a long time. And what made you click to see it in another way, that you weren't sad about it?
Yeah. So, well, at first I didn't handle it very well. At first, like I said, I was going out drinking. Like, a big deal. Let's just go party. And then I realized, okay, that's definitely not the way to do this. And I'd wake up the next day hungover, and I wasn't able to think properly. And it just was this cycle. And so that didn't last too long, thankfully. But then I just started taking care of myself, and I started talking to people who, you know, looking for help and asking if these emotions were good. I did a lot of writing. I did a lot of reading, and just taking care of my physical body to make sure I was in the best place possible to handle the pressure that the relationship ultimately and inherently puts on you. So it was just really taking care of myself during that whole thing, and pampering yourself. You know, it is difficult. So just do the things that feel good to you.
Yeah.
I finally got to a place where I felt this flip kind of switch for me, to where I started to know myself a lot better. So I started to understand why I would get jealous and why I would get sad. And so that's what gave me the momentum and the inspiration to kind of continue down this path, regardless of the pain, and regardless of what everybody around me was saying, I knew, oh, this is being a really positive thing for me in my life right now.
So how do you then view love or relationships? Because I know what you mean, and probably the how you perceive love. Like for me, it's an abundance thing. And my boyfriend does with someone else doesn't say anything about me, what I'm worth, what he's worth, what she's worth. I mean, and there's more than enough to go around for me, for him, for her, for everyone. But when you're in that place, like crying in the shower, like I was, you're like, but why are you, like, why do I have to suffer if you guys want to hang out together? Or
right. So
it's like this, like you have to have this really clear vision that I can hold on to, even when it is dark and when I am jealous or insecure. So I was curious, how is your vision or your goal in this?
So my goal was to learn about myself. My goal was to create a partnership to where it is 100% honest and we're not hiding anything from each other and we're not worried about our phones and if somebody's texting us. And also realizing that the happiness of somebody else shouldn't cause me pain.
Yeah.
You know, if they're smiling and laughing, who am I to say that they shouldn't be doing that together? You know, see it as like a best friend of yours. If a best friend said, oh, I met this guy and we had so much fun, it was a great night, you're not going to be like, ugh, lame, you didn't hang out with me. You know, it's like, oh, amazing, great. And so that to me, it was like, okay, I'm playing a long game here. I know it's going to be challenging and I know it's not going to be easy and it's going to be a process. But since I'm in this for the long run, let me find out about myself. Let me learn how to care about other people and get to a place of compersion instead of scarcity and holding everything as mine, and just realizing that love doesn't come in like a cup and then you give a little bit here, a little bit here, and a little bit there, and they're like, oops, I can't love anything ever again because I spilled my love cup everywhere. The more you love and the more you cultivate that and embrace that and spread that love, the more love that you have to give. Yeah.
It learned me a great deal about like dealing with it helped me with meditation as well. Like, okay, these are just thoughts, they pass, and oh, these emotions are actually triggered by how I think about it, and I can actually decide to think in a different way or see it from a different perspective, actually the perspective that I want it to be and not what society wants me to be. Like, okay, it has to be one person, and if you're not the most important person in someone else's life, then well, you're doing it wrong, etc., etc. I was wondering, is he still together with that first? Because you guys have like both of you have like the structural relationship alongside your relationship. Sorry.
So they dated for a while, probably 2 years, and then split for a little bit. It just got to a point to where she wasn't really something that she necessarily wanted, and they just kind of like grew apart a little. And then now, as of recently, within the past few months, they're now seeing each other again. And now me and her are best friends, to where when they first started dating, it's like, oh, well, we're going to try to figure this out and pretend like we like each other.
Yeah.
But now she is truly one of my very, very best friends. And I think it's because we went through having those difficult conversations with each other. We had to put ourselves in those very uncomfortable situations. We had to talk about all the emotions that were coming up. And so it allowed for us to be in a place of deep truth with each other. So now we're incredibly close to where she's just a best friend. So now I get to see it as, oh, cool, my best friend is having a great time, and my fiancé, the person that I love, is also having a great time. So I need to see it, and I can see it as it's a win-win.
Yeah. Wow. That's really, it's nice to hear it from someone who's also in that situation, because actually the second girlfriend, I'm getting to know her pretty well, and it feels strange because I said to her just last week, like, I'm like developing feelings for you, but it's not in a sexual way, and it's not in a sister way. It's like a really different, not in a best friend kind of way. It's like a kind of love that I haven't really experienced myself as well. It's fascinating to see it evolve, and she has the same thing. And now it feels like we're in this triangle relationship somehow.
It becomes so deep and intimate because you really are sharing.
It is really deep. Yeah. And
yeah, it doesn't necessarily have to be sexual. It's just allowing you to be so vulnerable and open with somebody, and then being so vulnerable and open with somebody that it deepens the relationship. We're not constantly putting on these masks and armors. It's being told.
The internet connection was a little bit unstable. I'm sorry. The last 2 words fell.
I was just saying, it's just about being like totally open. And when you're that vulnerable with somebody, that creates a very deep relationship.
That was one of the questions I wanted to ask you. Like, how important do you think it is to know the other persons and to develop a relationship with them as well?
So that's something that we have, figured out on our own. And I think that's also changes from relationship to relationship. So for us specifically, what we found is if we know the other people and we talk to them, and we don't necessarily have to be best friends by any means, but if we're all in a place to where we're saying, okay, we're teammates and we're allies in this, and we want to do our best to create the most optimal situation for everybody involved, then it makes it a lot easier because there's no assumptions being made. People are fully talking about what they feel and what they desire and what they feel they need and the relationship needs. And so it's easy to have these conversations instead of just, let's pretend it's not there. And then we step on someone's foot, and it's just kind of awkward trying to walk in the dark instead of just giving yourself a flashlight when you can talk to each other.
Yeah, you have to be brutally honest and open, or else there's like no trust. And when there's no trust, stop.
Right. So like when everything is permitted, when you have permission to do whatever you want in your relationship, the smallest shading of the truth or the smallest omission is huge. And so really being totally open and honest and ruthlessly honest about what you want, what's holding you back, if there's any sort of contraction that you're feeling in your heart or your solar plexus, it's about, okay, we got to bring that out.
Yeah. So I think one of the first questions people ask me is like, oh, so you guys have threesome sex as well then, since it's the 3 of you? It gets a little bit old.
Yeah, everyone comes up with, like, I've heard that they call the house like the big orgy house, when it's like, we live a very boring life, actually. Like it's just me and Aubrey hanging out with our dog most of the time. But it's just because it's so different, they create these wild stories that are just like,
sometimes I just go and hang in it. I'm like, yeah, sure. We have orgies all the time. I mean, why are your pants even still on? You're talking to me. Come on.
Yeah, when you come over, you have to leave your pants at the door.
Yes. Your car keys and your pants.
Right.
So how do you do it logistically? Like, because we are having some issues like, okay, getting it into the calendar and figuring out time schedules and when do I see him and when does she see him? So how do you guys do that? How often does Aubrey see the other girl, and how often do you see your other boyfriend?
So for us, it's really about time, right? Because we don't have a whole lot of time. So, but we'll talk about it beforehand. So the week is coming up and he's like, what do we have going on Wednesday? We don't really have much going on. How about you? Is it okay if I go see so-and-so? And I'm like, yeah, great, perfect. And so one thing about this relationship, especially in a relationship like you have where everything's completely is on the same level and completely equal, is being organized. Like organization to the max is like a part of a successful relationship like that. Like you said, you have your Google Calendar and you're figuring out what makes sense where. And so it's for us, we found that it's easier to kind of plan things out in advance just because we travel so much. So he'll see he has 2 other lovers and they live here in Austin. I have one other and he doesn't. And so I go on trips to go see him. So I see him a couple times a month for 3 or 4 days. just depending on what our schedule looks like, our work schedule. And that's why it's super helpful for everybody to be on the same team, because if his name is Ricky, if Ricky wants to call Aubrey and figure something out, then they can do that. And
so they are also, him and Aubrey are also like in contact and down with each other. Because my boyfriend, sometimes he's like, well, you can see this other guy, but I have to kill him now.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, obviously there's still emotions and things that will come up. We haven't transcended that by any means. But yeah, if something comes up, then Ricky feels comfortable reaching out to Aubrey, and Aubrey feels comfortable reaching out to him, which makes me feel better, because then I'm not stuck in the middle trying to relay one message here and the other message this way. It's like,
did
we freeze?
Yeah, it freezes a little bit. That's okay. So suppose you would get into a fight with Ricky. How would you feel? Like, does Aubrey then know about it? Does he help mediate? How does she feel about it? Very practical stuff.
Right. So, and that's, it's a relationship. So things eventually, we haven't crossed that road yet with Ricky and I, but there have been instances where Ob's gotten in arguments or issues with his other lovers. And so because I'm so close with one of them, we have this thing called SOS. So she sends me like a little SOS emoji. And for me, it's like, you don't even have to construct what's going on. SOS emoji. And then, I'll get on the phone and we can talk about it. And so I've mediated conversations between them and helped them figure things out, because once again, we're a team.
Yeah.
And if I were to get into an argument with Ricky, then Aubrey would be able to tell, like I wear my emotions very like out there. I'm not good at like stuffing it as much as I've tried. It's just like right there on my face. And so for us, the more that we do talk about things and work through it and be like, okay, look, I'm here to help you be as happy as possible. What can I do? Should I call Ricky? Do we all want to have a talk? I think it's really just about figuring out what works best for you. But in your situation, I would think that everyone being as communicative as possible during those times is helpful.
Yeah, we are. What I've noticed that the more I'm in contact with, her name's Nikki, the more we are in contact with each other, the easier it gets, because it's a person and you want the best for that person and for myself. And if it's like this shadow figure, you project all your fears and like, oh, she's probably the most beautiful, funny, whatever, sexy girl and always confident, and she doesn't want me around. Then you talk to the person like, okay, you're just like me, and you're also having insecurities and doubts, and then it's so much easier to grant each other, because what we've been dealing with is like sleepovers. Mm-hmm. We're still not there yet that it's like completely okay that he can sleep at my place like 1 or 2 times each week, because it's still, for her, it's still difficult. Like, okay, it takes work. I mean, it takes energy to deal with it. I have to go through this. And of course it gets easier. But how was it in your case? Like, did Aubrey sleep over right away with the other chick? And how was that for you? Or did you wait with that as well?
No, for us, it was, because they were already seeing each other. So they were already sexual with each other before we started.
Yeah, we were, but he just didn't stay the night.
Sorry?
Oh, we were as well. He just didn't stay the night.
Right. So to me, it's like, okay, what worked for me personally was, if you want to have a night with her, then you should have a night with her. I would prefer for you guys to be sexual and then you stay with her and then come home the next day, instead of be sexual and then come home to me right after.
Yeah.
And now I think I've gotten to a place to where I don't have that need to separate it and compartmentalize, and you're with her tonight and you're with me the next day. But at the time when we first started, that made me feel more comfortable knowing what time he was going to come home the next day, knowing that they were going to be sexual that night. So we started right out of the gates with sleepovers, and it just kind of like remained that way.
Yeah. I was curious. For her, issue of dealing with. It's like learning to let go, and learning that letting go is not the same as saying goodbye. Actually, if I let go, it comes back. But it's difficult because we've never learned to let love go. It's like, okay, something comes around and just hold on tight and pray that it doesn't go away. And learning to loosen up and say, okay, well, go, have fun. And if you come back, you will love me even more, or because that's what happens.
Exactly. It's giving somebody freedom instead of giving them the choice to be with you, not really forcing them, like anytime that you're with somebody, you want them to want to be with you.
Exactly.
And to be with you. They're not with you out of obligation. And so this type of relationship allows for that. And, for her, and honestly, in even monogamous relationships, that's a big thing. Whereas if you get into some sort of argument, people will just stay there and fight and fight and fight and fight and fight, and won't give each other any sort of space to take a breather, to let their emotions calm down so they're not so raw. Because taking space is one of the scariest things for people to do in relationships, because they don't know if they're going to come back. Yeah. When that might actually be the one thing that's going to cultivate a deepening and growth from the relationship. Yeah. And so there could be some sort of, trauma, abandonment trauma for her, thinking that, if he leaves, he's never going to come back to me, and so it's just kind of diving in to where that is and where that came from, knowing that it has nothing to do with you guys. Like y'all are there to love her and support this. And probably now that you guys are getting closer and you guys are talking about this, it's going to get easier.
Yeah, it definitely is. For me as well, I mean, we all have abandonment issues, insecurities, even the guys. I mean, if I sometimes I read Aubrey his newsletter, and he talks about that feels like daggers to his heart. Like, why is he doing this? I mean, my boyfriend's like, okay, it has to be some sort of fetish maybe for you. I mean, for him, he actually likes it or enjoys it because he's like, well, that's my girl, look at her being sexual and attractive, and it makes him feel good if one of us has another lover. And so then I read Aubrey and I'm like, whoa.
Yeah, Aubrey's like, I wish I could enjoy knowing that Whitney is with somebody else. But he's like, it's painful for me. But he's the type of person that's like, no, I don't find it, like, I don't get off on having sex with it was. But he's like, okay, but why is this bothering me? Why is Whitney's happiness bothering me? So he's always trying to dig into the deepest parts of himself. So that's why he constantly puts himself in these situations. And he's an amazing writer. And so he's just like, you can just feel what he feels. Yeah. The first time I had a lover 8 months into it, he didn't know if he was going to throw up or need to go run a mile or needed to poop his pants or what he needed to do. He was just like, ah! So it was just interesting to watch. And being from I have been doing this for 8 months now.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, for me, it was because they were already together and they opened up and so I could join. So for me, it was like, well, you are already there, the other girl. I had to accept it right from the gate, and she could grow into it and just open up more and more and more, or letting go more, so I could spend more time. And it's really interesting to see all the different ways, how this, I don't know, evolves into. It's not even in its final form. How do you see the future? How would you imagine? You're still getting married, I guess.
Yeah, we're still engaged. And for us, it's a commitment to a relationship, to our specific relationship, which is what I think marriage should be anyway. You shouldn't just get married under how your neighbor got married, let them have their own marriage and what that means to them. And you create your own marriage and what that means to you. So for us, it's just basically a commitment ceremony, a further commitment ceremony to each other to create our best relationship and be there to work for each other's missions and grow with one another. And so for us, we don't really know what the future holds. And I think, it's challenging to say it's going to be one way or another. A lot of people ask, well, will you ever be monogamous again? And it's like, I don't know, maybe, it's an option for sure. And I think it's just realizing that relationship boundaries and agreements, they should be flexible and fluid, because we as humans grow and your relationship grows. And so allow the boundaries of your relationship to move as you grow and transform into who you are.
Yeah. Someone asked me this week, like, okay, it seems like you're healing in this relationship, maybe some trauma that you had. So what do you do when you're healed? Like, can you then go back to monogamy? Like, that's a good question. I really don't know.
I mean, healing, I think, is a constant process. Like you never wake up one morning and you're like, wow, I'm healed it all. I figured it all out, unless you're like a guru, monk, Dalai Lama. There's always more layers to uncover, and there's always things to look at that you haven't looked at, and there's always things to learn about yourself that you haven't. And it's not to say that open relationship is the only way to look at those things. I mean, that's something you can do in any relationship, but this is just a way that it will magnify that, and it creates this growth that's like this instead of slow.
Yeah, actually it's like,
yeah, exactly.
First you have 8 months of crying, and then
oh yeah. But in all of those uncomfortable situations, there's always a lesson. Like I like to say, your emotions are messengers. What are they there to tell you? So if you're super sad over a specific situation, like use that and get curious. Why are you so sad? And not to say that you shouldn't be sad. Like, I think you should feel your emotions, but just go underneath that sadness and go underneath that jealousy or anger or frustration and get to the root of the matter.
Yeah, and learn to comfort yourself, because default mode is like, okay, look for someone outside, like my friend or my girlfriend or alcohol, whatever, to comfort me, to stop the pain. And it really takes guts to look inside to see, okay, well, what is this?
Yeah, because it's you want to be like, nope, I want out of here. It's way better if I don't feel this way. But it's like, that's just going to keep coming up over and over and over again in different situations. If you're not just in the middle of it and asking yourself, okay, what is this emotion teaching me? What is going on? I know it feels uncomfortable, but let me sit in this uncomfortability and find out really how I'm feeling and why I'm feeling this way.
Yeah. I think I've noticed that actually is the healing, like just sitting with it and going through it and breathing and not doing anything and just try to let it go. It's difficult to explain. People are like, okay, so what do you do then? Well, I don't know.
Sit and be, and you feel. You feel everything you want to feel. And if there's any thoughts that pop up in your mind, like, those are lessons and gems that you can take with you. Write it out. I mean, when I was going through some of the hardest times, writing for me was huge, just to get all of my overwhelming thoughts out of my head and onto paper. It seems very easy, but no, people tend to not do it as often.
Yeah. A strange question maybe, but does Aubrey try to... No, I think you already answered it. Like, if you, how much work does Aubrey do to fix it, like to make it work? Like, there's a lot of talking involved, and logistics, and dealing with emotions. And my boyfriend says it's like, okay, don't do this if you have a 9-to-5 job, because you have to call a lot. You have to spend a lot of time. You have to mediate, especially in the beginning, a lot of emotions that come up. And how much work does Aubrey do? Or is it like, okay, you girls settle this for yourself? Like if you're insecure or she's insecure, how do you guys work this out?
Right. So it does take a lot of energy, right? And I mean, I still think if you have a 9-to-5, you can definitely do this, but just knowing that it's like, okay, this is going to take a lot of my extra energy, almost all of it, because it's emotional and physical and mental and everything, X amount of energy. And if you have that extra energy to where you're interested in exploring this, then you can do it. But knowingly that you will be worn out for a bit.
Yeah.
But, you know, for us, it really is just everyone working together, and we have to. We can't just leave somebody there to work on their own stuff. Now, granted, they have all of the tools to get through this, and they have people that can help them, and they can do all of these. So we can give them as many resources and support as we possibly can, but then it is up to them to make the effort. You know, it is like, okay, I want to do this for myself. So they need to move into that as well and not just leave it on other people's shoulders. So if one thing is you're afraid to use your voice and talk about how you really feel, and I'm here like, tell me how you feel, you know, like, how can I help you? And you're not doing it, then the responsibility goes on to you then.
Yeah. Yeah. And how does this tie into like ayahuasca? I've drank, I don't know, 18 times, maybe, I don't know. I've been to Peru as well. It helped me, not in this specific situation, but just with my basic insecurities, I guess. And
exactly.
Did it like, how does it work for you?
I would say that exactly the same thing. You know, ayahuasca and other psychedelics like wachuma and psilocybin really allowed me to look at my own insecurities and the things that I wasn't aware of. And so just being able to be more aware of yourself and know yourself better will help you in this type of relationship, but it will also help you in all of your other relationships. So I think doing psychedelics plus an open relationship has honestly made me like a better human being. I'm just nicer. I think about people more. I want them to be happy. I'm not like competitive. I'm not as jealous. It's really relaxed a lot of the fear-based thoughts that I've had.
What was the greatest moment you had so far?
Ooh, through open?
Mm-hmm.
The greatest moment that I've had so far.
Or the greatest lesson or insight, maybe.
Yeah. So one of the great things for me is through growing up, and this was something that I was actually surprised about, and I talked about a little bit on the podcast, but it was growing up, I was extremely competitive with other women, like very competitive, to where I didn't have very many girlfriends. I only had mainly guy friends. Why? Because I didn't feel safe having female relationships, probably because I grew up with my dad and he had multiple women coming in and they were telling me that I was what to do and how to live when they were coming into my house. And so I had to be competitive and I had to stand up for myself from a very young age. So I took that into my adult life. So what I found through open is I now have the ability and I now have the desire and almost need to have beautiful, deep relationships with other women. And they're not sexual, because people think that, oh, you're doing this so you're just having sex with all of them. And it's like, no, we're just like amazing, amazing friends. And so being able to strip away that competitiveness and see another woman as like, oh, I want to boost you up and I want to support you and I want to make sure you're as happy as you possibly can be, because that also makes me happy. And so now I have deep relationships with women that have supported and nourished my life in a way that I never thought possible.
Yeah, oh, that's beautiful. I came across a letter. It's a blog post somewhere online, and the girl begins the letter with, it's a letter to the women that sleep with my man. And it begins with, thank you for giving him what I'm not able to give him, because you're a different person, different texture, you're a different being, and you can give him something that I can't give. So thank you for being here. I'm like, wow, yeah, so beautiful.
Yeah, we all are different flavors. We all are, just completely different human beings. And if we weren't, what a boring world would that be?
Yeah.
It would be so mundane. But this is like, humans are not boring. So we keep everything up and going. And yeah, it really is just a big smorgasbord of like
awesomeness. Yeah, that's right. What was the toughest moment because I know I've been on the edge of like, oh, I can't do this. It was going on and on in my head, like, I can't do this. I'm not strong enough. I can't do this. Like did you have like moments like that as well? Like you were like, okay, no, fuck it. I'm out.
Oh, for sure. I had tons of those moments. I was like, that shit crazy. I don't know why anybody would do this relationship. But yeah, I mean, I think those are moments that come up from time to time in any relationship, thinking like, why am I with this person? You know? But obviously open heightens that. And so for me, it was mainly just figuring out, I was still in the process of figuring out if open was the right way for me or not. And we were not surrounded by a community of people who were doing this. We were doing it basically on our own and just trying to figure it out as we were going. So we didn't know what the hell we were doing, basically. We thought we did, but we really had no idea. And so there was multiple times that I thought like, this is just pointless. And there's no way that we can get out. And so actually one of the things that we did to help us was one, psychedelics for sure, but also we had a coach. We had Dr. Dan Eagle who really helped us. So that's why I got into coaching, because it was, wow, you have somebody that understands how you feel and that your emotions aren't crazy and that this is completely normal. And realizing that, okay, so Dan would put us in a situation to where we could communicate in a way that we weren't just yelling and throwing insults at each other. We were really getting to the underlying heart of the matter. We're getting down to the very bottom of it. And so that was super helpful. And so that's why, I wanted to be a coach for people looking into this open relationship path, or any unconventional relationships, even monogamous relationships. There's ways that we can create relationships that are much better for us, and it doesn't have to be open. And so just being a confidant for somebody through that process and saying, oh, by the way, you're about to slam headfirst into this wall. So, but you can go around it. And this is how.
Or here's a pillow that you can put on your head because you're going to go anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Just duck next time.
Yeah. So how's that been going? Like, what are like typical questions that people ask you for coaching like this?
Yeah, so it's been going really well. We've had a lot of positive, feedback from it. And it's really just, like I said, it's people wanting somebody to talk to, because they are often, every single person I've talked to almost said, I just feel alone. I feel like I'm surrounded by friends and family and I have no one to talk to about it, and they don't understand me. And so it's been amazing just to be there for them. But what I've realized is a lot of women are heading this open relationship and kind of polyamory conversation, whereas people usually think, oh, men prefer to be open. Yeah. When it's like, I've had maybe 2 men and multiple women looking into this type of relationship, and they're the ones that are interested in opening the relationship up. Yeah. So that's been really cool. And then we get into a lot of, people ask me about kids. Now, we don't have kids by any means. So that's something that we're going to have to, cross that bridge when we get there. But there is a lot of research out there saying that, look, their kids don't really want to know what you're doing behind closed doors, regardless, with your spouse even. And so if you bring in somebody else, they're certainly not going to want to know what's going on there. And so there's been a lot of research surrounding that. And really it's about any questions that they have pertaining to their specific situation. How can we leave the session with more honesty and more clarity on exactly which way you want to go and how, and the best way to do that.
Yeah. Beautiful. You mentioned Sex at Dawn. Any other reading material that you can point people to that was helpful for you?
Yes. So Sex at Dawn is great by Dr. Chris Ryan. My favorite book right now is Untrue by Wednesday Martin. And that's all on female sexuality and female infidelity. Probably hands down one of my favorite books I've ever read. And it's very easy to read, a lot packed with science and studies. And that was great. Also, The Ethical Slut. I can't remember who that's by.
Yeah, but someone gave it as a gift to me, like, I think you might find this interesting. Like,
really?
Wow, this is like a guideline.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, exactly. So people interested in unconventional relationships, that's great.
How did you deal with, because there's some criticism about sex ed as well, like, well, this is not really scientifically solid what he's saying, and it's just like he just wrote this to get into other girls' pants. And
right.
Have you heard about that? How do you feel about that?
I've heard a little bit about it. I haven't dove too deeply into it. I'm sure some of it, there may be studies that don't support it. I'm not totally sure. But there's science that will support basically anything ever. It depends on where you get your science from. It depends on what the polls are and everything. I do know a lot of I would say the critiques when they say he just wrote it to get into women's pants. I know Chris very, very well, and that's not the case. And when somebody says some sort of trigger that was pushed by that. And if he did write it to get in a whole bunch of girls' pants, who cares? Why does that have any bearing on your life?
Yeah, true.
But I would definitely recommend Untrue and Slut.
Yeah, I'm gonna write it down. I'm gonna look at it definitely. How open is it in a way that you mentioned, okay, we have to schedule it a lot. Well, what do you do if you're out in a place and there's this hot guy and you want, I don't know, have sex with him or kiss him? Do you call or be up beforehand, or how do you guys figure that out? How free is it?
It's free, but it is also talked about beforehand.
So no casual oh, look what I found.
For us, that doesn't really seem to work because we just want everything to be out and open. I think that can work for relationships. I think if you do have an agreement to where it's okay, you're going on a trip, and if you meet somebody, let me know after. If you're going out with the girls and you meet somebody, let me know after. But I think it needs to be an explicit statement instead of just something that's assumed. So it should be you should sit down with each other and be this is 100% supported and encouraged. You don't have to let me know beforehand. For us, we don't, and we also really don't. I don't even think either one of us have had a one night stand in this whole 5-year open relationship. So that's very rare to even be in that situation. Most of the time we know the person and we're able to go to each other and say, oh, there is a little bit of attraction that's blossoming here, and I would like to explore that. How do you feel about me going to dinner? Or how do you feel about this?
Oh, that's nice. Yeah. I forgot what I wanted to say.
That happens to be all
that. It's fine. It's okay. Is there something you want to share to close up? Something that you wanted to talk about that I didn't ask you, or topics that you feel this is really important, we should talk about this?
I think just for people in all kinds of relationships, it's just about truly figuring out what you want for yourself and having those open, honest conversations with each other and not being afraid to express what you really, really want. Because a lot of the times, if you're just holding everything back, you're not truly happy in that relationship anyway. So you do have the ability to create the best relationship possible. Yes, it may be hard, and this goes open, poly, monogamous, whatever. Yes, it may be hard, but don't think that you have to settle for something. People are very adaptable. We like to learn, we like to grow, and you can truly have what you want.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, I would like to thank you for your time, and if people want to know more about you, where can they find you or get to know you or contact you about the coaching?
Yeah, this was really fun. I'm glad we did this. And you're in the Netherlands, right?
Yes.
I
know because you've been traveling to, I think, for Glory a couple of times to the Netherlands. I saw it. But I guess you quit?
I did. I quit Glory. And that was honestly a very challenging decision for me because it was my dream job. It was a dream job of mine for 2 years. It was honestly a job that I dreamed of since I was 5 years old, sports broadcasting. And then I was doing it for my favorite sport. So it was awesome. And I loved the people I worked with. But I was doing an interview at Madison Square Garden in New York for one of the championships. And I remember there was a moment where I was interviewing a fighter in ring. And I said, in my head, I said, wow, I'm spreading his message when I have my own message to spread. And it was that moment that everything kind of like clicked for me. And it was a very challenging decision for me to make. I shed like tears over quitting a job, but like I knew it was the right decision. And so I, cut ties with them. I'm still super close with everybody that works there and still love the company. But I needed to put my time and energy into spreading the message of love, basically. And that's what I wanted to do. And so now I'm feeling incredibly inspired and motivated. And this type of work is only like, it brings a fire to me that is just incredible. Incredible. So I don't know how it's to the Netherlands anymore, but I will definitely make.
Oh, it froze a little bit. Sorry.
Oh, no worries. I was saying I don't get to travel to the Netherlands as much now, but I will definitely make it over soon, hopefully.
Yeah, do that, but don't go here in the winter time because it's getting really cold at the moment already. Yeah. Cool. Are there any plans I don't know, is Aubrey writing a book on love as well, or are there plans, or are you co-writing or planning or doing something? Is there brewing something?
So he already has like 5 ideas for his next 5 books. And we are talking about doing a love and relationship book together, but that'll be a few years down the road. So right now, I'm coming out with a YouTube series on unconventional topic. The first one is on why marriage is broken, or if marriage is broken, and I'll have experts, and so it's going to be a whole docu-series on that, which I'm really excited about. And then focusing on the coaching, and if people out there are interested in coaching, I do it one-on-one on Skype, or it can be couples. We can do a mediated talk, and you can go to my Instagram, which is Wit in Love, WHIT in the letter LOVE. And I have my link there where you can book. And then also, if you just want to email me, if you have any questions, it's whitneyinlove@gmail.com. And if you send me anything on Instagram, I do try to respond and read as many of the messages as I possibly can. And I'll be doing more Instagram lives where I can, take your questions live and answer them that way. So we're really just diving full on into this.
I love it. Yeah. Great. Keep it up. And if you do travel to the Netherlands, it would be so cool to do like a double interview, like you and Aubrey, and then me and my boyfriend as well, maybe with Nikki. Like, okay, that's
yeah, that would be so cool. I'd love that. Keep things interesting.
We will make sure. My boyfriend has a podcast as well. So,
cool.
So maybe we can set it up someday in the future. Just let me know if you guys are in the Netherlands. That would be really, really cool. Spreading
if it happens, I'll definitely let you know.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again for your time. It was really, really nice chatting with you. And just keep doing what you're doing.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This was really fun. Much love.